40 male used to be in a gang. While it's true that I assisted in robberies, escapes and revenge crimes, I was never the person to wish harm on someone else. For that reason, I decided to give up my gang membership, move out of state and settle down. Once I got a real job, it took hardly any time at all to meet my future wife, 37 female, and fall head over heels. She came to our little town straight from NYC. Sick of the hustle and bustle that possessed everyone in the city. It all looked gray and meaningless before she decided to seek out a joyful countryside to live in. We were both escape artists living our second life. Even after we were married in our home with our beagle named Dean. I periodically remembered that I had connections to people who knew how to get stuff done without getting caught. I didn't know I would need to reconnect with one of these people. Again, I knew my wife was spending a lot of time with this group of friends. She grew close to, they were even going to the club together. I didn't mind. She earned her own money and was a grown woman. She made money from home by managing one man's business connections. She scheduled his appointments and wrote correspondences on his behalf. I didn't know what the business was. All I knew was that it was very successful. He didn't have the time or patience to keep all his ongoing organized. So it was up to my wife whenever she was off work. She spent some quality time with me before heading out to have some fun. I didn't enjoy the busy, crowded, loud atmosphere, but I figured if she went from NYC to this life, she probably missed the crowds. The biggest city near us was Richmond, Indiana. There was one club in particular my wife liked to visit one night. I really felt like I needed to follow her. The way my wife left the house was weird. It was like she really didn't want me to come with her. Like if I asked to tag along, she wouldn't know what to say to me besides. No, she was absolutely gorgeous. Like always, her dress hugged her body, making her look like the most appetizing hard glass. I ever saw. Her long hair looked like flowing whiskey. That's what I kept thinking about. As I searched the crowded place for her 15 minutes before I got there, she posted a selfie with her and another girl, and I saw the club name. I could see a man next to her, but he was talking to someone out of frame. So it was hard to tell if he was with her. I spotted her sitting in the VIP section with what appeared to be members of the mafia. My wife and I were living in Indiana for about 5 years at this point, and I just couldn't understand how she managed to find this type of crowd. Hundreds of miles from New York. It was like I was looking at the woman she told me she didn't want to be anymore. She moved away from that life only to find the same thing again. I knew it would be stupid of me to try to approach them at all. So I returned home and contacted Marty. He was one of my connections and he had some spare time. Lucky for me. I chose to move to Indiana because it's where Marty called home. He spied on my wife for me for 3 days. That was all the time. He needed to discover the following. She was acting as secretary and assistant to a crime lord. AP had at least 15 men working under him, but he gave the most attention to my wife. She was his main squeeze, and Marty was able to capture photographic evidence of their sexual relationship in her house. Apparently, Marie was hiding in the bushes beside her driveway and heard my wife telling this man that she lived alone and liked it that way. After they used my house for their meeting, she took all our framed pictures out of the drawers and put them back. Exactly as they were before I left for work that morning. Even though I was seeing and hearing the truth, it was so far from what I expected that it felt fake. I didn't want to believe that the woman I started my second life with was a liar and a cheater. I didn't want to consider starting a third life without her. I liked this one. My thoughts changed as soon as Marty showed me a video of them having sex in the club's bathroom. Suddenly she wasn't a classy, sophisticated woman. She was a despicable girl that used me and lied, willing to go behind my back and give herself to another man in a public bathroom. Marty told me he believed their relationship began shortly after we bought our house. Around the same time, she met those women, friends of hers. I knew I didn't want to be married to her anymore. I didn't even want to see her again. Marie hung out with me while I called all our friends and family. My MILS attitude was extremely selfish. She just asked me what I expected her to do about it. I told her not to give my wife any support during the divorce because she didn't deserve any help. After destroying our marriage. After that conversation, I felt like more needed to be done about this. When my wife got home, Marty was with me and I showed her the pictures he took. She knew she was caught. So she sat down on the floor right where she stood and asked me what was going to happen. I told her I was divorcing her and she needed to move out. Her jaw dropped and she asked me where she was supposed to go. I told her I didn't know and I didn't care because she ruined my life. I expected her to be my loyal partner, the one I could trust and bond with without worrying about her cheating or leaving me. I swear she snickered when I said this. She covered her mouth and blamed it on her brain reacting wrong to the situation. She was only making it easier for me to be furious with her. Marty helped me usher her out the door with the bags we packed for her. But she just kept laughing and asking if we were serious. She knocked on the door for a while but eventually got on her phone. Someone came to get her. None of this was fair. I hated that she had someone else to bail her out of this situation. If I cheated on her, I wouldn't be able to get off as easily as she was. I went to the police with the evidence we collected and they confiscated my wife's laptop for their investigation. She hated that even more than my divorcing her. She was living at AP's house when the police raided it after finding evidence. He was linked to a major violent crime. Her laptop revealed that she helped to make arrangements for AP to get away with more than 10 crimes. She picked evidence, dumping locations using Google Maps. They were both arrested and served several years before my ex-wife was released. She's bitter, filled with hate and struggles to find any stability in her life. Now, I am sorry your wife proved to be completely unworthy of the life and relationship you intended for her. Instead of starting her life over and remaining respectable, she broke your heart and messed up everything. It's devastating to learn that a spouse has cheated and stooped so low, but you handled it as best you could. You sought support from friends and family and exposed the truth. When you're ready to meet someone new, make sure they want the same serious relationship you do and that they're ready for it. After getting to know someone, it's pretty easy to tell if they're the type of person to settle down, compromise and communicate. Life presses on no matter what happens. So there's always hope for what waits to be discovered. Thank you for sharing this story. Let's now get into our second story for today. When I met my girlfriend. She was a recovering addict. It had been a year since she used anything, but neither of us had jobs or a very positive outlook on life. We were both scorned and it was hard to find motivation to succeed in a selfish, materialistic world. As we fell in love, I started to find hope in the future. I didn't want to stay in the same place we were, so I encouraged her to get a job with me. She got hired at a fast food place after I was hired at Walmart. Having jobs really inspired us and made us feel like we were putting our sketchy, lonely past behind us. We moved into the upstairs floor of her father's house. He saw us improving ourselves and thanked me. He said, I put a sparkle in his daughter's eye. One night, I was driving my girlfriend's father's car to pick her up from work as they closed the restaurant. I saw how physically close her boss was to her. They stood so close side by side they were touching. He was pretty good looking and tall. I was getting slightly jealous even before I saw him kiss her hand. Good night. When she got into the car, she was blushing. I asked what the hell that was all about. And she told me he was just an awkward wannabe gentleman. So I let it go. She continued working there for a while, and each time I'd pick her up until she said she could get a ride home from her co-worker who she claimed was female. When she started coming home extra late all the time, I knew something was up. Her shifts were supposed to vary. So she wasn't always the one closing. Another thing that hinted towards her infidelity was her giddiness. She didn't care what I was up to in life. She was just giddy and didn't really give a reason why. Besides that, she was enjoying life. I felt that joy too because I was hopeful for us. But that feeling turned into worry. Worry that her boss was the one making her giddy without much thought. I hired Appy actually, it took a lot of thought. I never did it before, but I didn't really let myself think that I suspected my girlfriend of full-blown cheating. She wasn't acting guilty, just happy. You can imagine my surprise when the PI returned with incriminating evidence. The next day while my girlfriend was back at work, he showed me the pictures he took of them the night before they left work together hand in hand. He drove her to his house where they happily went inside for an hour and a half. The PI was able to sneak around the house until he found a small sliver of space through a lacy window curtain where he took a picture. My girlfriend was topless on top of her boss. Like she didn't have a care in the world. I was in shock. My girlfriend's dad returned home and asked me what was going on. I told him but didn't show him the pictures. He believed me and calmed me down. He told me there was hope in my future and reminded me that I was the only one that could decide where my heart was. So at that moment, I took it back. It might seem silly, but that gave me the strength to fight through this. Her dad told me that he'd make her move out so I could have the upstairs to myself. I was so relieved to have him on my side. I printed copies of the photos and drove to Wendy's. I started handing out pictures to the employees and patrons. Anyone that was willing to grab a picture from me. My girlfriend and AP were the last to receive pictures and realize in horror that everyone else was seeing the same thing. I told my girlfriend to turn her picture over where I wrote that her dad was kicking her out of the house. AP had the nerve to tell me that I couldn't do this. I looked him straight in the eyes and told him I would have my revenge. My girlfriend just turned red in the face and screamed for him to come back. She followed him out to the parking lot under the watchful eyes of several people. He ignored her completely and could be seen through the windows, dragging away, leaving my girlfriend standing in the parking lot sobbing. I didn't care. I went home. The pictures were on the internet for her family, friends and employer to see. They were both fired. My girlfriend showed up at the house begging me to take her back. I told her to go find someone else to support her shenanigans. Her dad was sitting on the couch behind me backing up what I was saying. She was beside herself then and broke down crying. She kept saying she was sorry, but that couldn't take back the damage that was done. She moved back in with her cousin miles away. She didn't have to cheat on me or start using again, but she did both. Looking back now, I don't think she cared at all about me. I think she just lived on impulse without much thought about her future. You are certainly right. She didn't care about you. It sounds like she had a lot of growing up to do. She was recovering from her poor choices only to make them again. I'm glad you hired API and that her father sided with you. Handing out the pictures was a clever way to confront them both, so they would be unable to deny it. You ensured they would lose their jobs for their despicable behavior and put on a free drama show for the customers that day. Her father was right and you were right to take back your heart. You're the only one that can control how you feel or what you believe. Never give up hope no matter what you're faced with. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoy listening, please feel free to like and subscribe, if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your